So hey everybody, thanks for coming back to my channel. Today I have a new tutorial for you. It is for a staple editing piece, and that is A$AP Rocky's ASAP Forever music video directed by Dexter Navy. This is a all-time video, and you might be thinking to yourself, okay, but why are you creating an editing breakdown for it? You're a little bit late to the party, Vaughn, because there's already been about 5 or 6 tutorials or editing breakdowns for this particular music video, and that's true. However, I've gone over about every single one that I could find, and I'll tell you honestly that they do not cover the proper techniques. They give the baseline, bare minimum kind of tutorial on masking, but it doesn't really show you the time it takes or the finesse required and the effort required in every single frame to do something similar to what Dexter Navy did in that video. And honestly, I will let the results speak for itself, because a lot of those videos, if they do show a sample, it's nothing near what ASAP Forever looks like. As opposed to, I've been working on this for a while and trying to figure out exactly how you would create something similar, and I'll just let the results speak for itself. So without further ado, here is a preview of what we'll be creating today.
Come fuck with the game. I tell them don't fuck with the game. It's time to fuck up the whole game. Come fuck with the mob. Shout out to the lords and the guys.
Okay, so if that looked somewhat similar to the A$AP Forever music video, I hope you stick around. So first off, I want to talk a little bit about the cinematography. And even though this is not this is an editing breakdown, not a cinematography breakdown, it's crucial to talk about it because it plays a big role in this video. So one thing that's important to note is that the music video is shot on 16mm film. However, you can achieve a very similar effect just shooting with a digital camera. So the video that you saw was actually, that I shot, was actually shot on a Red Komodo, which is a digital cinema camera, and then converted to look like 16mm film using the Brimmy LUTs, which, if you're not familiar, I can talk a little bit more about that later or in another video. But it just takes, the reason that you would want to shoot in 60mm film, but it's pretty expensive. So to compensate for that in editing and to achieve something similar, you would just have to put a little more effort in. It might take a little bit more time and finesse, but you can get there and you can make something very close. But for that, this is not a tutorial on that, so I would recommend you check out an amazing colorist and a friend of mine who has mastered this technique in DaVinci Resolve, and the link to that video tutorial will be in the description below. Okay, so apart from the music video being shot on film, another important thing to pay attention to is the rigs used to shoot this film, which was done by an architect and filmmaker in London named Tony Hill. So if you're not familiar, and I doubt you are, because he's just so relatively unknown, Tony Hill is the man behind most of the rigs used in A$AP Rocky music videos. And it's so interesting to pay attention to because this is Dexter Navy's biggest influence. You can see it in the downside up with the downside up rig in this particular music video. So yeah, obviously this is a super expensive rig, but you can build a simplified version with a GoPro, a bicycle wheel, a pretty long stick, and a lot of duct tape. And that's exactly what I did, and you can get some pretty unique and interesting perspectives doing this. So I recommend, if you're really dying to maybe just explore and do something similar to this, you should try it out, and this is an example of what it would look like. For now, I'll leave it at that, but hopefully hopefully I can do a more in-depth tutorial about how to achieve this if you're interested in something like that. Just cheap builds to cool rigs that would really make your stuff stand out and just be unique, even on a relatively low budget. Okay, so now that the cinematography part is out of the way, let's talk about the editing, because that's what we're here for. And primarily I'll be focused on the techniques used in the masking in and out, rather than, for example, the ending, because the masking in and out of that sequence is probably the bulk and the thing that really makes up the edit. So let's talk about it. Okay everybody, so now let's get into the editing portion of this tutorial. And essentially I already did this edit. I worked over it over a couple of weeks just to figure it out and how to do it properly. And I'll be sharing those techniques with you, but it's not a step-by-step tutorial. It's more of me kind of explaining my process and what I did. And if you have any questions and I'm too unspecific on any particular subject or topic, just leave the comment down below and ask whatever's on your mind, or even feel free to message me on Instagram, and I usually get back to those. Okay, so the first thing I did is I started with my first clip. And my first clip and what I had in mind and where I wanted the mask to be. So it was my friend Jed sitting in front of a TV in this clip, and essentially I wanted the next clip to be inside the TV. So what was necessary, because I didn't use a green screen, was to use the roto brush and refine edge tool to create that mask within the TV. And it's a pretty straightforward tool in After Effects. It just takes a little bit of time, well, a lot of time actually, to get it right, but it will do the job well. So that's what I did. I masked out the TV and I created it transparent, so the next time if I put a clip within, you'll just see the clip within, and that's an empty space in the clip. So with that being said, the next thing I did was I pre-composed that TV composition and brought into a new layer, which is what you're looking at right now. What I did after that, so this is that layer, you can see it. What I did after that is I just warp stabilized the clip right here, as you can see. And this is essentially because I didn't have it on a tripod, I was just handhelding it. It was a real running gun project. But if you have yours on a handheld, don't worry about it, or it's stable enough for you, don't worry about warp stabilizer. But this will really help. It's pretty helpful to have your clip as stabilized as possible for this. Okay, so once that was done, I brought in my next clip that I wanted to be inside the TV, which is this sky clip right here that you can see. I wanted this to be within the TV, and what was crucial for pulling this off and making it look realistic is that they all follow the same movement from one clip to the other, and that way you can really create the illusion that that sky clip, that it was originally recorded like that sky clip is in fact inside the TV in real life. So to do that and to create the illusion of same movement, it's necessary to create them both as 3D objects. And how you can achieve that is by clicking right here, 3D layer. This little cube, you toggle this cube on and off, and that will make it so your layer is 3D. You do that to both the TV clip and the sky clip. The next thing you do is you create a camera in After Effects by going to Layer, New, Camera. Once you create that camera, you can position it and scale it in such a way that it will manipulate both the clips with the same movement in the same way. So it's going to look like once that sky clip is within the TV, you scale it and position it in that way. You turn on the 3D layer, and then you create your camera. You position your camera and keyframe it in such a way that it's going to look like they're together. And it's really simple and straightforward once you just do it. So hopefully that wasn't confusing. It might have been, but hopefully it shouldn't be. Leave a comment if it was, and hopefully I can figure it out for you. So yeah, that's one clip to the next, and I'm sure that's pretty much all I did. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how I created the sky clip into the book. And this is a fun one, this is an interesting one, and this really shows why those other tutorials are not really helpful, because they don't show you how you create textures and how you make one clip seamlessly blend into the next like it was already there. It's just very straightforward masking, but not really showing you how to do this. and I understand why, because it's hard to do and it's hard to explain because it's on a clip by clip basis. So how do you achieve this? Okay, so here is the second part of how I went from the sky clip to the book. This is a really good example of what the other tutorials aren't capturing, because as you can see in this book clip, it's not just a simple masking transition. You actually have to make so the sky clip looks like it was part of the book. And there's a lot of things that go into that, which I'm going to talk about in just a little bit. But the first step of this was, once again, roto brushing. So I masked the sky clip so it's transparent in the page where I want my clip to be. So once I had that done, is I placed the sky clip right under it. I positioned it under it. Once again, I made it 3D and I positioned it in such a way. And there it is. The next thing that I did to make it look like it's within a book is because, unlike a TV, books don't move, right? So I had to freeze frame it. So what I did for that is I went to layer time, and I went to freeze frame. And that way it just creates a still frame and placing that within a book. So it's like a pause, an eternal pause. And the next thing that I did is I created a new layer, and I created a new adjustment layer, and I added hue and saturation. And this was essentially to match the hue of the book, right? Because the sky clip doesn't necessarily match up with the hue of the book. It does kind of, they both have a bluish tint to them, but I wanted to make it a little bit more explicit. So what I did with that is I made it more black and white. And to do that, I added the hue and saturation effect. I clicked colorize, which makes everything in a two-tone hue, and I just played with the settings until I was really happy with it, and that is the result. Okay, and the next thing that I did was once again making the layers 3D by clicking this cube and keyframing the camera, starting off really inside the edges of the book to create this illusion that there's like very little of a jump between one clip and the next, even though they are two separate clips. And I created that illusion, and just by positioning the camera in such a way, it's something you have to figure out by yourself. And once I keyframed it, I scaled it out to have that effect. And that's what it looks like. I don't feel like that was a very good explanation at all, but once again, it's really hard to explain this. It really is, especially for this edit, because it's just so dependent on whatever clips you have, because every single one is going to be so different. But I hope that was helpful. And with that being said, let's go on to the next one, which I think is the eye clip. So here's what we have on the eye clip. I just made it a separate composition. Let me just fit that to the layer so you can see what it looks like. So here's the eye clip, and yeah, it's just a separate composition. And then I brought that into, I believe, here we go, pre-comp 2. And what I did for this is very simple too. I didn't really add too much anything to it. Once again, it's just a simple, first I did a roto brush on the eye, I believe. Did I? I believe I did. Pre-comp 2, icomp 2. Oh, so the first thing I did was I stabilized it just to make the masking process easier. And then inside of it, I just created a mask. I didn't roto brush it. It's just a ellipse mask, just because the eye is very circular. It's not very hard to. Roto brushing is for more complicated masking and more precise masking, whereas just any of these ellipse masks or rectangle tools are good for just solid shapes, and the eye ellipse is kind of a solid, really easy to follow shape. So I did that. The next thing that I did is I once again made the objects 3D, and I positioned the eye in such a way that the frame begins right after the book clip, and it comes into frame, and using the camera tool, and I just once again positioned it and keyframed it in such a way that it comes out smoothly. And also, I didn't mention this yet, but two of the things that I did to create the motion more smooth is using Easy Ease. So Easy Ease, it just makes your keyframes follow a gradual sloping ramp rather than a linear ramp. There's better explanations of how this works online, but I just recommend it because it makes all of your keyframe movements a lot smoother. The other thing that I did is I toggled motion blur, and essentially what that is, it just adds a little bit more motion blur, and you just click it right here, and you can see the difference. This is it without motion blur. This is it with motion blur, and works really well. So that is essentially it for the eye clip, I believe. I didn't do too much to it. Obviously, for the mask, I just had to keyframe the mask so it followed the eye properly, and I think I feathered it a little bit as well by only 2 pixels, just so small. But yeah, hope that's a alright explanation for that, and that's essentially how I did the book to the eye clip. And for the last one, it is the eye clip to the sign, and this was a fun one because this is another good example of one that you have to be very conscious about how you edit it, and it's not straightforward because you're trying to make it look like the previous clip is actually within a street sign, which obviously it isn't. And so what I did for this is once again, okay, and for this one, essentially what I did is to make it, I did the same process of every single one where I did the rotoscoping for the sign itself, because there was something in this street sign before. I just rotoscoped that out, and then I created an ellipse mask on the previous clip, right? Because so here's a sign with all the masking out, right? So it's just transparent, nothing's there. I made sure I left these 2 little stickers in just because it adds a little bit of character. So once I did that, I rotoscoped that out. I added 2 solids because I wanted to keep the color of the sign and then add the clip over that so it looks like that was a part of the sign, if that makes sense. So I just recreated the sign just using solid color layers. It's really easy. Just use your pen, what is it called? Eyedropper tool to match the color, which is found right here. And so it looks like the sign is just blank. So once I did that, I put on, I tried to attach the next layer. And what I did to do that is I first masked it so it's an ellipse, so it would fit within the layer, and also it didn't have any rough edges, which is something that you would expect on a sign. It wouldn't have any like clear edges, but kind of be masked around, like a sticker, for example. And I wanted to make it look like it was a sticker, like one of these stickers. So what I did to that is there's a cartoon effect in After Effects that you just apply, and it creates a quality to your clip that makes it look a little bit more cartoonish. Works well, in my opinion. And I also changed the hue and saturation, once again using the, I didn't use the colorize tool. I brought down the saturation, meaning it's just less color in it. And what else did I do? Oh, and one other thing I want you to notice is that I keyframed the saturation, so it doesn't immediately go, when the clip begins, it starts out with the same color as the previous clip. So it's like a transition from one to the next. And as you go on, it loses its color by keyframing the saturation. So it continually transforms into that dead sign, if that makes sense. Okay, and once I did, oh, whoa, that's loud. Sorry about that. And once I did that, is just another manner of keyframing the camera in such a way it reveals the next clip. And I kind of cut it off there. That was pretty much the whole edit. I mean, obviously, ASAP Forever was much longer, and you can keep on going, doing the same method for a bunch of different clips. Just I do actually have a lot of clips that I was gonna continue to edit for and do something for, but I mean, you can get an idea of how long this takes and how long it takes to do well, more importantly. But just these 4 clips, it took me maybe about a week of experimenting and then just really figuring out how to do it. But it all works really well, and you can create really cool stuff with it, and it's innovative and it's new and it's exciting. So yeah, that's pretty much the tutorial. I don't have too much to add, but one thing I do want to say is that as for the edit, you do want to make it so it matches the rhythm and flow of the beat. And I kind of cheated because I just grabbed the ASAP Forever thing song, so I just matched the flow of that. But whatever song you do, just make it so it cuts on the same time that the song has beat drops or snares or whatever. But yeah, it works just one to the next, and that's essentially it. Okay, if you watched this far, I really appreciate you, and let me know if you have any questions below, because I know that could have been confusing at some parts. It's not, like I said, this edit is not very straightforward. It all depends on your clips, but this is just a general outline of how and you can see the workflow and an outline of how you can achieve something similar. And if you have any questions, leave them below or comment on Instagram, or DM me on Instagram, because a lot of you have been messaging me on Instagram after that last tutorial I did. And I honestly love it. I love helping you guys out. And yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, and have a great day.